To the explainer. Today, we're opening up the flop files to look at the dramatic, documentary-style rise and fall of an absolute mobile gaming titan. We're going to break down exactly how a beloved childhood classic went from total global domination to becoming a heavily monetized ghost town.
Look, at its peak, Subway Surfers wasn't just a popular app on your phone, right? It was a literal cultural phenomenon. Just think about this stat for a second. More people have played this game than live in the entire continent of Africa. We're talking over 4.5 billion total downloads. It was one of the very first games to ever hit 1 billion downloads on Google Play alone. But despite those absolutely staggering historical numbers, if you look at the landscape today, it's been pushed completely to the margins.
And honestly, that begs the ultimate question that we're going to unravel today. How on earth did a vibrant, beloved masterpiece lose its soul, alienate its massive player base, and end up as mere background noise on social media? Well, to understand the tragedy, we really have to understand the triumph first.
Act 1. The Golden Age. So let's rewind the clock back to 2012. It was an era when mobile gaming was, simple, innocent, and experiencing a true golden age. Smartphones were just becoming a universal thing. People were completely obsessed with games like Temple Run and Candy Crush. And right in the middle of that whole gold rush, a Danish collaboration burst onto the scene, eventually reaching an unprecedented 4.5 billion lifetime downloads across the globe. You could play it for 2 minutes while waiting for the bus, or you could grind for 2 straight hours trying to beat your high score. It was just magic.
The developers basically created a perfect, beloved formula that appealed to absolutely everyone. Co-developed by Kilu and Cybo Games, Subway Surfers swapped out the dark, jagged aesthetics of early Endless Runners for this really bright, vibrant Saturday morning cartoon kind of style. But what truly made it a game changer was the World Tour mechanic. Every 3 weeks, the game transported players to a brand new global city, everywhere from New York to Tokyo. And arguably the best part? The monetization was completely fair. Sure, you could buy coins, but the purchases were entirely optional and they weren't in your face. The game actually respected your time and your wallet.
Act 2. A viral tragic myth. Now, before we trace its downfall, we absolutely have to talk about a massive urban legend. It perfectly captures how deeply the internet community projected their own narratives onto this game. You might remember a viral rumor going around on Facebook and Twitter, claiming that the game's creator made Subway Surfers in memory of his young son who supposedly passed away while skating on train tracks. But, as we dug into the sources, it turns out this was completely false.
In fact, the CEO himself had to publicly clarify that the game was simply a joyous celebration. It actually originated from an animated short called Train Balling and was built entirely as a tribute to diversity and underground street art. So the viral myth was totally debunked. But sadly, a very real, very different kind of tragedy was about to strike the game itself.
Act 3. The monetization trap.
Okay, here's the real turning point, where that classic player experience we all loved was traded for aggressive corporate profit. For years, Kilu brought technical publishing expertise to the table, while Cybo brought the creative vision. But in 2020, Kilu exited the publishing site entirely, leaving Cybo fully in charge. And as the whole mobile gaming industry evolved into these massive, complex multiplayer experiences like Genshin Impact or PUBG Mobile, well, Subway Surfers started to feel really dated. So to compensate for that, the monetization ramped up aggressively.
Almost overnight, players were hit with outrageous changes that just completely ruined the flow of the game. According to veteran players, the developers hiked the price of costume keys from 30 up to a staggering 75. And instead of smooth, uninterrupted gameplay, you were suddenly bombarded with 1-minute unskippable video ads. They literally introduced ad tickets that you had to purchase just to skip the interruptions. Meanwhile, those beloved World Tour updates, they just stopped innovating. Fans quickly noticed they were getting endlessly recycled locations, playing in a quote-unquote Hawaii or Mumbai that were really just cheap reskins of older files, bundled with repetitive character animations.
This direct quote right here from a veteran Reddit user really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the profound betrayal and frustration felt by the original fan base. The balance between fun and profit had tipped entirely toward profit. What was once a super clean, relaxing runner was now literally suffocating under its own greed, driving away the exact same players who built its legacy in the first place.
Act 4. Reduced to TikTok backgrounds.
So all of this massive player alienation led to a really bizarre afterlife. The game didn't technically die. Instead, it mutated into something entirely undignified on social media.
Let's look at this fascinating concept from psychology called visual tactility. It explains why watching endless rhythmic running on train tracks is so incredibly soothing to our brains. The game requires constant forward momentum, with very few distractions, making it pretty much the perfect visual sedative.
And because of that soothing effect, content creators started exploiting a psychological trick known as retention bait. You've definitely seen this. They began pairing clips of Family Guy or political streamer rants with split-screen footage of Subway Surfers gameplay at the bottom. The idea is that when your attention starts to drift from the main video, your eyes naturally flick down to the character collecting coins. It resets your attention span and stops you from swiping away.
Now sure, this sludge content strategy brought the official Subway Surfers brand a staggering 10 million TikTok followers, but it reduced an absolute gaming masterpiece to literal background noise. It was the definition of a hollow victory. The game was everywhere, yeah, but nobody was actually downloading it to play it. They were just staring at it to keep their brains numb while listening to a podcast clip.
Act 5. A desperate sequel.
Realizing that the original game was essentially suffocating under its own ads, irrelevance, and its new, weird status as a TikTok meme, the developers attempted a desperate pivot to save the franchise's actual gameplay legacy. So they launched a brand new sequel, Subway Surfers City, in February 2026. Billed as the next chapter, it promised a modern multicultural metropolis, fresh mechanics like stomp moves and bubblegum shields, and basically, a chance to win back the audience that had uninstalled the original app in sheer disgust. And you know what? It worked, initially, drawing in over 7 million pre-registrations.
And the reason they went for this desperate pivot becomes glaringly obvious when you look at the financials. In its first 2 months, the sequel generated nearly $1.9 million in upfront players' spending. That is more than double the $882,000 brought in by the original game over the exact same period. It proved that players still really wanted to love this universe if they were just given a fresh, less broken way to experience it.
However, the reality of the overall situation is pretty grim. The original game boasts 4.5 billion installs compared to the sequel's 27 million. Because that massive install base is such a goldmine for endless video ad revenue, Cybo is never going to shut the original down. It's almost certainly going to remain this hollow, heavily monetized zombie for years to come, existing purely to serve ads to the remaining millions of casual users.
Ultimately, we are left with a pretty haunting reality about the current state of a once-beloved childhood classic. It didn't go out in a blaze of glory. It was slowly suffocated by aggressive monetization, completely outpaced by industry trends, and hollowed out into a split-screen attention hack.
So I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up our explainer today. Is a slow, ad-ridden decay just the unavoidable destiny of every hit mobile game out there? Or could Subway Surfers have maintained its golden age if it had just respected the players who put it on the map in the first place? Thank you so much for exploring the flop files with us today, and we'll see you in the next explainer.